It was a Friday evening like any other. The sound of the front door clicking shut signaled my wife, Jessica, walking into the house. She was 34, a marketing executive, sharp as a blade when it came to work, always dressed to kill, and yet, recently, distant. I didn't pay much attention to it at first. Maybe she was just stressed. After all, she had been putting in long hours, climbing the corporate ladder, dealing with a tough new boss. It made sense, right? But tonight, something felt different. I was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, just waiting for the casual small talk we used to have. Jessica didn't even look at me when she walked in. No "hey, babe." No kiss on the cheek. She just strolled past me, eyes fixed on her phone, typing away like her life depended on it. A red flag? Yeah, but I still didn't react. Not until she spoke. "I have plans after work tomorrow," she said, her voice calm, too calm, actually. It was the kind of tone someone uses when they've rehearsed a speech 4 days. "I won't be home until the next morning." I froze. My brain processed her words like a slow drip of ice water down my spine. The next morning? What kind of plans required an overnight stay without even checking in? I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel it wavering. "What kind of plans, Jess?" Jessica turned to me, her eyes barely acknowledging mine. She tossed her bag onto the counter and began unbuttoning her blazer. It was like I hadn't even asked the question. "Just some work stuff. You know how it is," she replied casually, shrugging off her jacket, revealing the sleek black dress beneath it, the one I hadn't seen her wear in months. I could feel my heart hammering in my chest. "No, I don't know how it is. Where exactly are you going that keeps you out until morning?" She stopped for a moment, as if she had to remember her next line in whatever script she was following. Then she met my gaze, but there was no warmth, no hesitation. "It's nothing to worry about, Tom." She said my name like she was a teacher talking down to a student. "I'll be with some colleagues. It's just a long night. Meetings, networking, the usual." Jessica always had this air of confidence, a way of making people believe whatever came out of her mouth. But tonight, that confidence felt like a wall between us. I knew something wasn't right. This wasn't usual. This wasn't normal. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. The tension in the air felt thick enough to choke on. "You're telling me you're going to be out all night and you can't even give me more than that? What's really going on, Jess?" She sighed, exasperated, like I was being unreasonable for even asking. "Tom, don't make this a big deal. I'm tired, okay? I just need to get through tomorrow, and everything will be fine." Fine? Everything felt far from fine. My stomach twisted in knots. Jessica wasn't just brushing me off, she was hiding something, and she wasn't even trying to hide the fact that she was hiding it. "I'm not stupid, Jess. I know when something's off." I stepped closer, searching her face for any crack in the armor, any sign that she'd let me in. But her eyes were steely, unwavering. "Tom, I'm not doing this with you tonight," she said, her voice sharp now. "I have a long day tomorrow, and I need to rest. Can we just drop this?" It felt like a slap in the face, her shutting me down like that. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, was standing in front of me, but she felt like a stranger. "You expect me to just be okay with you staying out all night without an explanation?" My voice was louder now, anger bubbling up from somewhere deep. Jessica rolled her eyes, turned her back to me, and walked out of the kitchen as if I wasn't even worth responding to. The audacity, the coldness, it hit me like a freight train. I followed her to the bedroom, but she was already slipping out of her dress, getting ready for bed as if everything was perfectly normal. "Jess, talk to me," I pressed, trying to keep my frustration in check. "What's going on? Who are you really going out with tomorrow?" She climbed into bed, pulled the covers over herself, and stared at me with this look like I was overreacting. "Tom, you're being paranoid. I told you, it's just work. You have nothing to worry about." Nothing to worry about? My gut told me otherwise. My mind was already spiraling. Was she meeting someone? Was this her way of letting me know she was checking out of our marriage? The silence between us felt deafening, punctuated only by the sound of the ceiling fan whirring above. "Jess," I said, softer this time, "you've been distant 4 weeks. You barely talk to me anymore, and now this? Please, just be honest." She sighed again, this time more dramatically, like she was annoyed that I hadn't dropped it. "Tom, if I didn't love you, I wouldn't be here. But I need you to trust me. Tomorrow is just work, that's it." There was something so final about the way she said it. Like this conversation was over whether I liked it or not. She rolled over, her back to me, and within minutes, she was pretending to sleep. I stood there for what felt like forever, my mind racing with a million possibilities. I knew something was wrong. Deep down, I knew this was more than just work. But for now, all I had were my suspicions and the gnawing, gut-wrenching feeling that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. I climbed into bed beside her, staring up at the ceiling, wide awake. Tomorrow, everything would be revealed. Tomorrow, I'd get the answers I needed, or the truth I feared. The next morning, Jessica was up early, earlier than usual. In fact, I had barely slept. My mind was still racing from our conversation the night before, or lack thereof. She moved through the house like a ghost, quiet but deliberate. The sounds of drawers opening and closing, the soft thud of her heels hitting the hardwood floor, the rush of the shower, all routine, but this time they felt different, calculated, like she was preparing for something far more significant than just a day of work. I rolled out of bed, heart pounding as if I were preparing for battle. I couldn't shake the feeling that today was going to be the day everything came crashing down. But I wasn't about to sit back and wait for the inevitable. I needed to figure out what was going on, and fast. When I walked into the kitchen, Jessica was already dressed, sipping her coffee, her phone in hand as usual. But today, she looked different. The dress she wore was sleek, tight-fitting, a deep red that clung to her in all the right places. It was not an outfit you wore to meetings or networking events. It was the kind of dress that made heads turn, the kind that screamed, "I'm going out for a good time, and I want to be noticed." I swallowed hard, trying to hide the tension in my voice. "You're leaving early today." She looked up from her phone, flashing me a quick smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I have a lot to get done before tonight." There it was again, tonight. The word hung in the air between us like a time bomb. I sat down at the table, trying to act casual, but my mind was already racing. There had to be more to this, and if she wasn't going to tell me, I had to find out for myself. "So, what exactly are you doing tonight?" I asked, forcing a smile. "You know, just so I know when to expect you back." Jessica paused, her fingers hovering over her phone screen. She looked up at me, her expression carefully neutral. "I told you already, Tom. It's work stuff. Nothing to worry about." I nodded slowly, sipping my coffee, though it tasted bitter, like the truth was slipping through my fingers. I could feel the unease growing in the pit of my stomach. Something wasn't adding up. I decided to push a little further. "You're dressed pretty fancy for work," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Not the usual office attire." Her eyes flickered for just a moment, something unreadable passing over her face, but she recovered quickly. "We're meeting clients. High-end clients. You know how it is in marketing. Presentation is everything." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that this was just another stressful day at the office, that I was being paranoid for no reason. But deep down, I knew better. There was something off in the way she moved, the way she spoke, like she was playing a role in a story where I wasn't even a character anymore. Jessica put her mug down and glanced at her watch. "I should get going. Don't wait up for me tonight, okay? I'll be late." I watched her stand up, grab her bag, and head for the door without so much as a second glance. My mind was screaming at me to do something, to stop her, to demand answers. But I was frozen in place, paralyzed by doubt, fear, and the gnawing suspicion that whatever she was hiding, it was worse than I could imagine. And then, as the front door clicked shut behind her, a sudden thought hit me, something so outrageous, I nearly laughed at myself for considering it. What if she wasn't going to work at all? My mind latched onto the idea, spiraling with possibilities. What if she was seeing someone? What if this entire work thing was just a cover for something more sinister, something she didn't want me to know about? I tried to shake the thought, but it stuck to me like glue. Before I knew it, I was on my feet, grabbing my phone from the kitchen counter, my hands trembling. I had to know. I had to be sure. Without hesitation, I called Derek, one of my oldest friends, a guy who worked security at a fancy downtown hotel. We'd been close since college, and if there was anyone who could help me, it was him. Derek picked up on the second ring. "Tom, it's early, man. What's up?" I hesitated, feeling ridiculous for even asking, but the urgency pushed me forward. "Hey, Derek, quick question. You know Jessica, right? My wife?" "Yeah, of course. What's going on?" I swallowed hard. "Does your hotel have any big events or corporate functions happening tonight?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Yeah, actually, there's a marketing conference happening. Big thing." "Why? Is Jessica involved?" I felt a rush of relief wash over me. Maybe I was overreacting. But something didn't sit right. I couldn't let it go just yet. "Can you check if she's on the guest list? Maybe under her company name?" Derek hesitated, his voice lowering. "Tom, that's kinda iffy, but for you, I'll see what I can find out." "Hang on. I paced the kitchen, my mind racing with every worst-case scenario imaginable. Minutes felt like hours as I waited, the silence in the house almost suffocating. And then Derek's voice returned, quieter this time. "Tom, I don't see Jessica or her company on any list. Not for the conference, not for the event tonight. Nothing." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "She told me she had work meetings at a client event." Derek paused again, like he didn't know how to break it to me. "There's no event with her company, man. I'm sorry, but it's not happening here." The world around me tilted, my grip on the phone tightening. If she wasn't going to work, then where the hell was she going? Suddenly, everything from the last few weeks came crashing down on me. The late nights, the unexplained absences, the distance. My wife, the woman I had trusted for nearly a decade, had been lying to me, and now she was going somewhere with someone. I felt my chest tighten, my breath coming in short, jagged gasps. Was she having an affair? It was the only explanation that made sense. The sudden changes in her behavior, the secretive plans, the late-night disappearances, it all pointed to one thing. She wasn't just slipping away from me emotionally. She was physically disappearing too, but I wasn't going to sit back and watch it happen. I wasn't going to be the clueless husband, waiting at home while his wife ran off to God knows where. I needed answers. Now. "Derek, do me a favor," I said, my voice shaky but determined. "Keep an eye out at the hotel tonight. Let me know if you see her or anyone who looks suspicious." "You got it, man. But what are you gonna do?" I clenched my jaw, staring at the door Jessica had just walked out of, my mind made up. "I'm going to follow her." As I hung up the phone, the weight of what I was about to do hit me like a freight train. I knew this could change everything, but I had no choice. I had to know the truth. And whatever I found out tonight, I was ready for it. Or so I thought. By the time 5 p.m. rolled around, I was already pacing the living room, watching the clock as if it could somehow speed up time. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, confusion, and dread. Every second that passed felt like a drop in the bucket, fueling the growing storm inside me. Jessica had texted me earlier, confirming once again that she wouldn't be home tonight. There was no affection in the message, no warmth, just cold, matter-of-fact words. "Don't wait up. I'll be back tomorrow." I stared at her words, fingers twitching with the urge to respond with something, anything that would crack her fake it. But what was the point? Every conversation felt like we were walking on thin ice, and I didn't have the strength to confront her outright. Not yet. Tonight would be the proof I needed, proof that she was lying, that my gut feeling wasn't some paranoid fantasy. As soon as it was dark enough, I grabbed my jacket and keys, slipping out of the house without so much as a sound. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional hum of a passing car. I drove toward her office building in silence, my hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. Jessica always parked in the same spot, a few blocks from her office to avoid the steep parking fees downtown. That would be my starting point. Sure enough, her car was there, parked in its usual place. I pulled into a side street, watching from a distance as the minutes ticked by. Where the hell was she going? I wondered if I'd catch her sneaking out with some guy, if I'd see her laughing, carefree, in someone else's arms. My blood boiled just thinking about it. I was so lost in my thoughts that when she finally emerged from the building, I almost missed her. But there she was, stepping out of the revolving door, her red dress catching the streetlights, her hair perfectly styled, her heels clicking on the pavement like she owned the world. My heart dropped into my stomach. This wasn't the look of a woman coming from a hard day at work. Jessica looked like she was heading to a red carpet event, or something far more intimate. I slid down in my seat, holding my breath as she approached her car, unlocked it, and got inside. I waited, heart racing, watching as she pulled out of the parking spot and merged into traffic. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading and anticipating in equal measure. I followed at a distance, careful not to get too close. The last thing I needed was for her to spot me. At first, the drive seemed like nothing out of the ordinary, just another trip downtown, maybe to some fancy bar or restaurant. But then she made a turn that set off alarm bells in my head. She wasn't going to a bar. She wasn't heading to any part of town we'd ever been to together. In fact, she was heading toward the outskirts of the city, the part of town that screamed secrecy, the kind of place where people went when they didn't want to be found. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. Where the hell was she going? Jessica's car continued down the road, passing by dilapidated buildings and abandoned lots until she pulled into a small, inconspicuous hotel on the edge of town. My stomach twisted into knots as I parked across the street, keeping my headlights off. This was a far cry from the glamorous hotels she usually stayed at for work trips. This was the kind of place you went when you wanted to keep things private, when you didn't want to be seen. I watched her step out of the car, her red dress glowing under the dim, flickering sign of the hotel. She looked around, almost as if she were checking to make sure no one was watching, and then disappeared through the side entrance. A wave of nausea hit me as I sat in my car, frozen. This was it. This was the moment. I had to see for myself. I had to know who she was meeting. I stepped out of the car, my legs shaking as I crossed the street, pulling my collar up to shield my face from the cold night air. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure someone would hear it. But no one did. The hotel parking lot was nearly empty, save for a few beat-up cars and an old motorcycle. The place reeked of cheap alcohol and bad decisions. It was the last place I'd ever imagined Jessica, my wife, but here she was. I entered the hotel through the same side door she'd used, slipping inside as quietly as I could. The hallways were dimly lit, the walls covered in peeling wallpaper that might have been charming 50 years ago but now just looked sad and forgotten. The receptionist barely glanced up as I made my way through the lobby, his eyes glued to a tiny TV set. He didn't care. No one here did. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs, following the faint click of Jessica's heels. I could hear her talking, her voice soft but unmistakable. She was just ahead. My hands were trembling. My breath was coming in short, shallow gasps. What was I going to see when I rounded that corner? I pressed myself against the wall, just shy of the door she had slipped into. It was slightly ajar, and from where I stood, I could hear every word of the conversation inside. "You didn't tell me you'd be this late," a man's voice said. His tone was casual, almost annoyed, as if he were expecting her to have arrived sooner. "I couldn't just leave earlier." "Tom's been acting weird," Jessica replied, her voice low and irritated. "I think he's starting to suspect something." My heart stopped. So, this wasn't just a fling. This was something deeper, more deliberate. They had a plan, one they'd been hiding from me. I bit down on the inside of my cheek, fighting back the wave of anger surging through me. The man laughed, a smug, condescending sound. "Well, you better keep playing your part. We don't want him ruining things now, do we?" I leaned in closer, straining to hear every detail. My head was spinning, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. "No, of course not," Jessica replied. "We're so close. Once everything's finalized, I'll be done with him for good." Done with me? What the hell was she talking about? I couldn't take it anymore. My hands clenched into fists as I pushed the door open, the cheap wood creaking under my weight. The conversation inside came to an abrupt halt as I stepped into the room, my eyes locking onto the two figures inside. Jessica stood frozen by the bed, her eyes wide with shock, and sitting across from her, leaning back in a chair with a smug grin on his face, was none other than Stephen, her boss, the same man who had given me that knowing smile at the company party a few months ago. He looked completely unfazed, like he'd been expecting me all along. "Tom," Jessica's voice faltered as she took a step back, her face paling. "What are you doing here?" My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear her. Everything inside me screamed to lunge at Stephen, to wipe that smug grin off his face. But I needed to stay calm. I needed answers. "What am I doing here?" I echoed, my voice cold. "What are you doing here? What's this plan you've been hiding from me, Jessica? What the hell is going on?" Stephen stood up slowly, still grinning, as if he had all the time in the world. "Looks like your wife didn't tell you everything, did she?" Jessica turned to him, panic flashing in her eyes. Stephen, shut up. But he wasn't about to stop. He stepped closer to